I am really glad that we're having this conversation, Renee, because you're doing such a powerful work with families. And you're not just a divorce attorney, you help families rebuild and reinvent themselves after such major life transitions, right? So I want to ask you what your work has taught you about unconditional love.
Oh my gosh, this is a good one. Most people don't start here. It's funny because you would think that as a divorce lawyer, I would be totally jaded and be like, love and, scorned earth. And that's actually not at all how I feel about marriage and love. And I have held on to hope. I mean, I'm 3 times married, and some people might call that stupidity, and I call it hope. Because while I spend my days seeing the relationships that don't work, I also am surrounded by people in relationships that are beautiful and that do work, and they are lasting, and they had the magic formula for what it takes to have a lasting relationship. And so I've always looked to those people, and that was kind of like the North Star as I was going through my own making decisions of when to release a relationship, because it was like I had this feeling of knowing that there's something that exists out there that I don't have to settle.
Uh-huh.
And so when I met my husband and everything just lined up, and no one's going to say any relationship is perfect. It's not, but it's perfect for me. And there's this understanding of each other and how we operate, and like really getting each other and respect, and that type of unconditional love. Like, had I not believed in that, and had I had this feeling of like, oh, I work in divorce spaces and 50% of all marriages fail, and I wouldn't have what I have today. So when someone comes to me and a client and they're like swearing off marriage for eternity, I'm like, just give it time. Like, give it time for you to heal, and then be open to what could be out there if you allow yourself to be open to that. So, I mean, what else are we living for if not for love?
That's our journey on earth, right?
Yeah,
That's the whole purpose.
right.
Have you ever advised anybody, any of your clients, not to pursue the legal action?
Yeah. I will have people who will come to me, and I can see that they feel defeated. They don't know what to do next, but I can also see that they're not ready to get divorced, and there's so much love that they have for their spouse. And I'll send them away, and I'll say, go to marriage counseling. Like, and if you don't find the right marriage counselor, find another one, but at least make that um take that action step for the two of you to see if you can work through this, because sometimes people have things that they're just disconnected, but it doesn't feel like it's so broken. And the courts are always there, and I'll tell them, like, the courts aren't going anywhere. You can hire a lawyer anytime, but you can't undo this. So go at least try to commit to the next 4 months, 6 months, and either way, you'll know. You'll know at the end of that process, okay, this is absolutely the right thing for me, or no, we made this work. Or maybe even if it didn't work, there'd be a new understanding between the two of them to co-parent in a different way. So it never hurts relationships. I think that it's always that counseling piece of it is always good, whether there's hope or not.
Let's talk about instincts.
Yeah.
So, w- a lot of people say trust your instincts, and sometimes instincts can be clouded by fear,
Yeah.
right? So, how do you help your clients tell the difference? That is this my inner voice or is this fear talking?
So I love this question because this is like a whole first quarter of the book that I wrote was about really recognizing, and I think as women, we're very instinctual,
Yes.
and we have these gut feelings, and you can call it instinct, you can call it intuition. Like there's so many words for the same thing, but it's that knowing, right? You just know, and it's that like nagging that you know something is true, but what do is you push it aside because of the fear, because of the it doesn't make sense, it's not practical, it's not reasonable, because what happens is your head is telling you all the reasons why your heart or your intuition is wrong. So I always tell people make a list of all the things. Like if we're talking about divorce, and let's just do that because that's where we sort of started, is if someone's coming to me and says, um, I this is absolutely over. We've grown apart. There's no reconciling, but I am afraid and I think I need to wait another 5 years until the kids are older. So I
Hmm.
will say to them, like, you can tell, like, I can tell when someone's sitting there whether they're done. And if they're that person who's done and I can't send them away to go to counseling, then it's what's the list of tell me all the reasons why you think you need to wait 5 years. And some of it's the kids, it's money, it's we need to save more. Our house is underwater. And they start to list all of these things that our brain is telling us, those are practical, reasonable reasons in order to not move forward, but it also keeps you stuck. And going back to why are we here? Love. I like to think happiness and fun. And, when we're happy, we're a better parent. We do better at work. We show up for our friends in in a different way. So when people, it like breaks my heart when people put off their own happiness for a number of years because of all the things that their head is telling them, like it's not the right time and it's not practical or reasonable to do that now. So it's really getting clearer as to what is the thing that's holding you back. And if it's this checklist of fear based things, then go back and tap into that intuition piece of it. And why are you delaying and waiting for living your life for something that, let me tell you, 5 years from now, you're still going to have that fear. You're
Hmm.
still gonna have reasons that your head will tell you not to go forward with it. So, but you've also just let 5 years of your life go by when you could have moved on to your own next chapter.
And your book is She Who Wins.
Yes. Yep. That is right. And that was the whole premise was it's really not about divorce. It's really for anyone who is at this stage in their life when they're trying to figure out how do they make the hard choices, the bold choices to go for it in their life, in their careers, in their jobs. A lot of readers are entrepreneurs, in their relationships. And as women, we're often told to get smaller, to get quieter, to doubt ourselves, to if we can't do something perfectly, then we don't do it at all. Like that's a huge one that I was the victim of for a long time. And so it's about really just taking bold action that doesn't have to be perfect. It can be really messy. It could be you could fall on your face, you could get rejected, and it's still the right decision. And it's like really getting comfortable with kind of living your life fully, regardless of what that outcome looks like.
Have you ever faced like this paralyzing fear yourself that you didn't know what to do, and what did you do?
All the time.
All the time.
I all the time. So and that's like it's funny because there will be things that will come up and I'll stop and I'll just be like, okay, like I'll be a little paralyzed by it. And I bring myself through sort of the same process of, okay, what am I actually afraid of? Um, and so like public speaking for me. Believe it or not, like I love speaking on stage and I hate speaking on stage. So right? Like it's a dual like I have had massive stage fright. And so that's the thing that will come up for me. And it's like, okay, I have something coming up in April that there's going to be 500 people in the room and it terrifies me. And I'm like, okay, maybe they'll cancel. Maybe I should back out. Like
Yeah.
reasons, right? And then I'm like, okay, the fear. I'm like, that's fear. I'm like, my fear is what? That I'm going to forget the words, forget how to like that I'm not going to connect, that people are going to hate my like that's the fear of that taking that step. And then it's like, okay, so what? So what if I trip? So what if I it doesn't go perfectly? So what if there are people in that audience that don't like the message? Like, so what? And you do it anyway. And
Where do you feel that fear in your body?
where do I feel it? Oh my god, I get like, I get it in, like, my stomach, like, the pit of my stomach, so it's like it manifests as anxiety for me, and I'll even wait. I mean, it's a couple months out, and I've woken up a couple times being like, "Oh my god, like, what am I going to I have to work on my keynote for it." So it sorta lives there, and then it lives in my head because it's my head doing all of the talking me out of all the reasons and talk about imposter syndrome, like, why me? Why am I doing this? Like, I'm not best equipped for this. And, so things like that come up all the time for me. And I sort of go through that same exercise of like figuring out why, what voice do I really need to listen to her? Do I really need to listen to that small voice that's trying to keep me small and trying because on the other side of this, it's like on April 2nd, when this is over, I'm gonna wake up feeling so damn good, and I'm gonna be like, "All right, I did that, and if I did that, then I can do the next bigger challenge that comes my way." And I think that that's, like, the most important piece of all of this is once you keep flexing that muscle, it becomes easier and easier and easier to conquer the next thing. And then you start to realize, like, failure, rejection, it's got nothing on me, like, I don't care, right? And it starts to become, a lot easier to quiet that voice and not let it dictate the decisions we make in our life.
Very nice. Where is your event?
Oh, it's the, Business Women's Forum on April 1st in Connecticut.
Lovely. It's gonna be streamed online too.
They stream it, I think it's just in person.
Oh, I see.
Oh my
Okay.
god, thank God, that'd be another whole level. Yeah, at least we're
Add
containing
every year to add to
the
your list.
room.
So, what do you think are some of the intuitive red flags that we see at the beginning or early on in the marriages or even new relationships that we dismiss
Yeah.
that we shouldn't?
Um, I think anytime, and I know a lot of people talk about red flags as if it's the thing the other person, it's the red flags on the other person, but I look at it more like your own reaction to something. So the red flag is how is somebody reacting to something their spouse or their partner is doing or saying? And if you start to censor what you say and how you say it, or that feeling of walking on eggshells, or feeling like you can't speak your mind, or you start changing your own behavior, you decide not to go out with your friends because it's easier than the grief of what your spouse is going to give you if you plan that girls weekend, like you're changing your own behavior. That's the ultimate red flag, because then it's 10 things from the other side of what they're doing, but you're starting to adapt because it's easier to go along in order to get along, to not upset the cart. And like when you start noticing yourself doing that, that's a sign that's a conversation needs to happen. Or you may end up finding yourself sitting across from someone like me because the resentment is going to build. And yet one day you wake up and you're like, I don't even know who I am anymore. I don't have the same friendships. I'm not speaking my mind like I used to. And if I look in the mirror, I'm not that same person.
Yes. How do you define a toxic relationship?
Think that is any relationship where you don't feel safe in order to be who you are or say what you need to say in that relationship. If you can't express yourself in a relationship, then I think that has the makings of toxicity. There's always the obvious stuff, the abusive, the controlling, like those are easy, but I think it can be much more subtle than that. And I think that's how it first shows up. Like usually toxic relationships aren't waving a huge flag and saying this is a toxic. It starts really small.
Right. Like quiet.
Yeah.
It can be quiet, like you said, subtle. So divorce can also be out of self-respect, not necessarily
Yeah.
a major problem that a couple might have.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's so for some people have the big thing. the big, infidelity or there's something really big. Some people don't have that big thing in their relationship and divorce is still right for them because they don't recognize who they are in the as it together. And that's okay too. And I think those are the harder ones because when the other spouse, when your spouse is just an awful person and we can label them a narcissist or whatever that is, when they fit that category, it becomes much easier to say, well, this is the reason why I want out. But when you don't have that, when you have a partner who may be respectful and maybe just fine and might be a good other parent and you still choose to leave, I think that's when it gets really, really hard because you're asking yourself, well, why can't I just be happy? Maybe it's me, like why what's and I think that that's when you start to have guilt and you
Yeah.
start to question everything, and those are the ones where you really see people waver and then they say, well, we'll wait for the until the kids are off to college and we'll wait 5 years because it's not horrible, I can live through this, I can live with this, it's just fine. But there's such a disconnect and there isn't that emotional connection and that intimacy, and that impacts who you are, who your spouse is, and how you show up in the world too. If it's if the two of you aren't really connected on those levels.
So, based on the journey that you have gone through yourself and your work, the work that you do, and all those cases that you work on a regular basis, how would you advise somebody who wants to, like young people who want to get married?
Yeah.
How can they really choose their partner? Because most of the marriages, especially among young people, it's out of love or passion
Yeah.
or stuff like that. But what about awareness? What is the role of awareness
Yeah.
in choosing your partner rather than the facade of things?
So what I see is people go into, well, when they come to me it's often too late, but what I will hear is that they've gone into the marriage not having the hard conversations because they're in love and it's fun and they're engaged and there's the ring and the wedding, it's all this fun stuff, but they're not having the really hard conversations about money, for example. Not a sexy conversation, but what are each of their money habits? Is someone a saver and someone a spender? Does someone come into the marriage with debt? And what do you do with that? And a lot of times I'll hear someone say that, well, I had no idea that my spouse had all of this debt. And I found out after we got married. Like, those are really important conversations. So all of the cards are on the table. And then you can have a game plan. Like, if someone's a saver and someone's a spender, sort of acknowledging both sides, and someone likes to spend their money on vacations and saying, okay, how do we satisfy both? How do we plan the vacation and we put money into our 401k so both people feel like they're getting what they need from that. And a lot of times you'll just have each person kind of doubles down on how they feel about that situation. They never talked about it. So having those really uncomfortable conversations in between, the ones about flowers and honeymoons and all of that, but that's usually the best thing in order to avoid, it's going to come up at some point. You're at some point that uncomfortable conversation has to happen. You're better off getting ahead of it, and so everyone's going in and you kind of have a game plan than feeling like it's, because what happens, it usually like builds up and resentment builds up, and then all of a sudden it explodes and it's you're not the person I thought that I married. Well, they were, you just chose not to sit down and really talk through some of that stuff. So communication's everything.
Everything. Do you have any recommendation as far as the resources where individuals can find these subjects? Because most of us don't even know what to talk about. We're like, oh my God, I'm in love and I just want to be with this person. And you don't know what to talk about.
It's funny because I've actually never had someone ask that particular question, and my immediate thought went to, believe it or not, I'm like, you could probably chat GPT conversations to have before you get married. And I bet you'd get a pretty, I'm gonna do this after this interview and see what it gives, but you could probably have a really good checklist of the thing. It's probably gonna be kids, religion, where you want to live, money is definitely gonna come up, like the big stuff, and just start there. And you kind of check through something like that.
Great. ChatGPT,
I know,
absolutely.
right?
So easy. Yes. So this is an interesting idea that just came to mind. So divorce cannot just be with for couples. It can be within family members, right?
No, no, just married couples.
Married couples.
Yeah.
So what is this idea of family members divorced from each other emotionally?
There is a whole trend of, I saw this article out there that came out last year, and it was like you're removing your family, supposedly toxic family, from your life. Um, and then that's okay to do that. And there's this whole like, there's a lot of actually controversy and on the, and I'm certainly not a therapist, so I wouldn't even pretend to know how the best to broach that subject. And I think it's so nuanced. That's why there's therapists, and that's why I think people should go to therapy when you have situations, if you have a relative, a family member, and things are really toxic. I think it depends, right? Like, I think sometimes having a conversation is the healthier thing than to do than to just to cut that person out of your life because you don't wanna face it head on. Sometimes, depending on what has happened, the best thing to do is eliminate conversation. So it's really so specific, I think, to each person. And that's why I sort of kind of cringe when I see this blanket, like, just cut your family out and not. I'm like, oh, I'm like, that's going to come back at you at some point. At some point, you're going to face that and have to deal with that. And it's going to come up, and maybe there's regret because someone passed away and you didn't work through it. I don't think there's an easy answer for any of that.
Understood. What is the truth that you think that people should know before even file for divorce or seek legal advice?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think that the big one is you're taking a household and dividing it in half, and for most people, that means the financial strain is going to be huge, because if you have 2 incomes that are providing support for one family and you divide that in half, something is going to have to change. Your lifestyle might change, the size of your house might change, the country club membership might change for, for some people. So it's really the expectation that nothing will change if you get divorced is one I think that people struggle with, and they kind of grapple with the idea of that's for some people, like, the house is a big one. You may have to sell your house. I get it if you want it and there's emotional ties to it, but you might have to because it's not affordable to stay there. And someone who might be paying child support and alimony will be like, well, I make a lot of money. I want to stay in the house. Well, you don't get to not pay child support and alimony just because you want to stay in the house too. So, that's always a really hard one. And then parenting. Parenting is co-parenting can be hard. It's not even that piece of it. It's there are going to be moments where you are going to miss your kids terribly. And you're gonna maybe have guilt from it. And it might be a holiday where they're not with you, and it's going to be crushing and devastating. And that's okay. And you can feel that, and you wake up the next day and you move on. So it's just, I think the emotions of divorce kind of ebb and flow. So your divorce could be done and then it hits you 3 months later at some point. I think the first year is really the hardest after the divorce. And it's just like riding the wave of the emotion and just being okay with that. Like, you don't have to have everything put together on that the right when you file or when you sign the papers. Like, it's definitely a journey, at least for that first year.
So, how do you help your clients after they sign the papers start over? Is there
So, yeah, so I tell people, and I love telling women to like start getting really comfortable doing things on your own, in the sense of like, go out to a nice restaurant, take yourself on a date, and just sit at a nice restaurant and just be. Take yourself away for a weekend. Start small, like go somewhere just with yourself, and just be and reconnect with who you are and the things that you love to do before life happened and marriage happened and kids happened. And find a hobby, like reconnect to something you've always wanted to do. Like, point point the attention inward a little bit at yourself, and your job has always been to take care of the family and take care of the kids, but now you're going to have some time where you get to discover yourself again and use that time, rather than spend that time texting your ex, making sure that the kids had a bath and the right dinner. Like, maybe do something for yourself. You can just reconnect with who you are.